Today from the global lane, chaos at the border, media obsession over tear-gassed asylum-seeking women and children, but silence about American victims of illegal immigrant violence. America at risk, not from Mexico, the Islamic terrorism threat across America's northern border. College students may consume garden salads in the Garden State, but one university there says no Chic-Fil-A. And I'll drive it home about two American missionaries who obediently finished the good race. They lost their lives but won eternity. And it's all right here, right now from the global lane. The ongoing chaos along America's southern border with Mexico has led to renewed calls for a border wall. President Trump recently met with members of Congress and asked for $5 billion in funding. It came as the media obsessed over the tear gassing of asylum-seeking migrants near the California border. Here to discuss what the mainstream media isn't telling you is Maria Espinosa. She's National Director of the Remembrance Project. Okay, Maria, video and photos of women and children being gassed at the border were all over social and mainstream media. So what were your thoughts as you viewed those images?
My thoughts about the fake news is how terribly biased they are, refusing to report about our American stolen lives, our angel moms and dads and their griefs and horrific tales of what happened to their children, how they were viciously murdered. You know, they're not reporting about the killings of Americans right here in our own country, yet they're going to the border and reporting on and setting up these types of photos as well. In order to push our far-left agenda. They're going there and photographing individuals who are whose intentions are to invade our country and ignore our laws. We have a pathway which they can enter legally, but they choose not to. And this is an element that the far left is supporting over American citizens.
What else should we know that's not being reported, Maria?
Well, you know, Gary, I think it's very important to know what our friends at Judicial Watch discovered a few weeks ago when they went on the ground to Guatemala. They spoke with Guatemalan authorities, and they were told that their law enforcement had removed over 100 caravanners with ties to ISIS terrorists. And again, just most recently, Mexico was to have deported over 500 of these criminal aliens within this mob caravan. I've been to the border many times. I've been on a night watch and have seen the illegal aliens crossing with backpacks full of drugs. Now, we were told of a very just heart-wrenching story, again, where a 6-year-old girl was found by workers along a pipeline, and they rushed her to the emergency room. She nearly had expired. The doctors, after examining her, found that there were 30 different DNA samples in this young girl. So these animals, and I use President Trump's definitions, they are animals. Any men who will rape a 16-year-old girl, and several men, 30 different men, Gary, and this is what the left is championing and trying to pull on the heartstrings of Americans to allow into our country. And when the media reports about 120 ratio to 1 of the illegal alien, far left, open borders agenda and message versus what is happening here on American soil, you know, this is a very dangerous situation, and I think our country needs to wake up. Every citizen, your viewers out there, certainly need to realize that this is orchestrated, this is intentional, and we have to stand up and actually do something and get active to save our country. Okay,
Maria, quickly, we're running out of time, but border wall funding, the president says he may shut the government down if he doesn't get it. What do you think, another empty threat?
He should do it. Look, we're talking about American lives here. And if it were your viewers or your loved ones' American life at stake here, we would absolutely do it. It's the baseline. We don't have to allow anyone into our country. We have a constitution. We have laws to follow. And he absolutely should. And those legislators know better, but they refuse to protect American lives.
Okay, Maria Espinosa from the Remembrance Project, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Gary. God bless you.
God Almighty is a God of blessing. He always wants to bless his people. But how do you get that blessing? And what principles will unlock that secret?
In Miraculous Blessings, Pat Robertson shows you how to open the floodgates of God's awesome blessings in your life.
In order to have a blessing, you've got to be blessable.
Discover what the Bible has to say about God's covenant of blessing, the laws of blessing, and what are the hindrances to the blessings of God.
The words of Jesus, they are as valid as the law of gravity, and if we follow those laws, we will be blessed.
You'll see amazing true stories of everyday people whose lives were rescued and transformed by God's miraculous blessings.
But even the doctors acknowledged that this had to be a miracle.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com to become a CBN partner and get miraculous blessings today.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Despite some recent disagreements over trade, the U.S. and Canada have a great relationship. But that could change if our northern neighbor doesn't stop its policy of welcoming Islamic extremists. As Dale Hurd reports, new evidence suggests Canada is turning into a terrorist base that could threaten America.
The U.S. and Canada share the longest undefended border in the world. There hasn't been a reason to defend it because there hasn't been a serious threat from either country in a couple hundred years. There is now. Canada is today the happy home of thousands of radical Islamists, ex-ISIS fighters, and the Muslim Brotherhood. Their numbers continue to grow, and they've infiltrated the Canadian government on several levels. Many Americans assume that all is peaceful and well with their northern neighbor. But security experts here warn that by welcoming radical Islamists, Canada now presents a danger to the United States. Terrorism expert David Harris, who worked for CSIS, Canada's spy agency, told us a major attack on the United States by Muslim extremists based in Canada is only a matter of time.
Many years ago, I suggested that many of the Islamist extremists might regard Canada as an aircraft carrier from which to maintain operations against the United States.
Canada is becoming a foundational sort of place for Islamists of all stripes, including the Iranians, by the way.
Thomas Quiggin is one of the authors of Submission, The Danger of Political Islam to Canada, with a warning to America. He says Canada is in denial over the terror threat it's created for itself and the United States. And the denier-in-chief is Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who welcomed returning ISIS fighters back to Canada, saying they would be a powerful voice.
He's actually said in our parliament, sort of like out loud on the public record, that if you were opposed to ISIS fighters returning to Canada, it is because you're Islamophobic. In other words, it's not them that's the issue. It's your opposing their return makes you Islamophobic, it makes you racist.
I think there's the idea that, well, we need to welcome everyone because everyone's wonderful, so kumbaya.
Toronto Sun columnist and XM Sirius Canada host Anthony Fury.
Heavens, this notion that ISIS fighters are somehow deserving of kind of a respect and a cultural accommodation just as much as anyone else is nonsense.
Assalamu alaikum. Hello, my friends.
This is Prime Minister Trudeau sending an official greeting to Canada's annual Reviving the Islamic Spirit Convention, which he attended as a member of Parliament even after news reports the event was linked to a group that has funded Hamas.
This is also about celebrating our shared beliefs in justice, fairness, equality of opportunity, and acceptance.
And it was quite startling for people to say, do you know who you're talking to? And why would you say that you share their values when their values are anti-democratic, anti-women's rights, pro-slavery, pro-stoning of women? I mean, the stuff that's on some of their websites here in Canada is startling.
There have been lone wolf attacks on the U.S. from Canadian Muslim terrorists ever since the Quebec-based Millennial bomber tried to cross the border to blow up LAX in 1999. But the Islamist threat to Canada has been played down. July's attack on the Danforth in Toronto, where 2 women were killed and 13 injured, has been treated by the government and the media as only a mental health and gun control issue. Fury thinks the police are covering something up.
There's been a total cone of silence around the Danforth shooting story. I wrote a feature where I found out that the family statement, which said mental illness, nothing to see here, that had actually been sort of co-authored and put together by a spin doctor and also a Muslim community activist.
Much of Canada's mainstream media seems to stand with the Islamists. The Toronto Star announced it was no longer using the name the Islamic State because something so barbaric could not be Islamic. Parliament passed the notorious M103 anti-Islamophobia motion last year. Critics call it a government attempt to silence any criticism of Islamists in Canada. The government's welcome mat is not lost on the host of this Canadian Muslim program on the internet.
But of course, all of us take it for granted in Canada.
See, Alhamdulillah, Canada has given us his blessings. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.
Canada is your country.
Islam is today the fastest growing religion in Canada. And Montreal-based terrorism expert Marc Labouie says the demographic change because of immigration from the Islamic world is not only profound, but dangerous.
I claim that the vast majority of Sunni-based Islamic institutions in the province of Quebec and also in Canada are Islamist.
Labouie says Islamists have infiltrated Canada's government and its security services, in some cases at the invitation of the government.
Police forces such as Ottawa, where they have visited radical preachers in order to recruit them to join the police force at some point or another.
But the Canadian government has done more than welcome dangerous Islamists. Quiggin accuses it of funding terrorism through its financial support of some Muslim groups. And if terrorists based here attack the U.S., he won't be surprised.
In the past, I think Canada would have had a defense. We could say, look, we tried to get this stuff stopped, but we failed. But if it happens this time, we won't have that defense.
The problem is so advanced, the government agencies in charge of our national security are so compromised that it will be very, very difficult to be able to turn things around.
Dale Hurd joins us with more. Dale, you and I grew up in Michigan, and I know years ago we could drive back and forth over the border at Port Huron, Detroit, even up at Sault Ste. Marie, and we'd only have to show an ID, a driver's license. How easy would it be now for a terrorist to cross the border into the USA?
Well, real easy if they weren't a terrorist yet, if they were radical Muslim and they weren't on anyone's watch list and they were a citizen of Canada. I mean, if they weren't a watch list, they'd have to be more creative because, but they could find some part of the border to pop through.
I'm sure some people would argue that the greater threat to the U.S. right now is from lone wolves, domestic terrorists, and that, Dale, you're just scaring people, that this isn't based on fact. So how do you respond to that?
Well, I'd actually agree with that in that, I mean, the lone wolf terrorist is almost uncontrollable because, as you know, this is the story. It's a moderate, so-called moderate Muslim, not really interested in Islam, has some kind of spiritual crisis and starts going back to mosque, gets under the spell of a radical preacher and decides they need to commit martyrdom. And afterwards, after they've killed people, their friends are saying, wow, he was such a nice guy. I can't believe he did that. So, I mean, those people are almost not impossible to track, but very difficult to attract. So yeah, that is much more likely. But the idea of the story was that Canada is essentially setting itself up as a very warm and cozy home for some potentially nasty people.
Well, how good is Canada at vetting immigrants?
Well, Canada has a point system for vetting asylum seekers, refugees, but then you have Justin Trudeau, and he opened the door. In 2016, they let in almost 50,000 Syrian refugees. Now, keep in mind that Canada is, you know, roughly 1/10 the size of the U.S. in population. It would be like 500,000 Syrian refugees entering the United States. Trump has capped it at 30,000 for this year. But only a handful have entered the United States. And these are people, I'm sorry, but they're people from a broken society, some of them Islamic radicals. And the problem is that they're not being tracked as far as we know. I mean, officially, they're not being tracked.
Like we do here in the U.S., I know that Americans, if they're suspicious, they'll report someone. So how about terror attacks actually inside Canada? We're not seeing Islamic terror like we've seen in Europe, but why is that, and why do you expect that may change?
Canada's a great home for radical Islamists, and maybe they won't attack Canada. But I think there will always be, as I said earlier, they'll always be at risk from a lone wolf attack, because these are people that are on a personal spiritual mission, and they're you know, they want to get their 72 virgins or pay for their sins by killing people, and we never know when that might happen.
And based on your report, Dale, it seems that a terror attack from Canada is a real possibility. So what can be done to prevent it from happening?
Yeah, you mean what should have been done? You know, as I'm looking at Canada, the problems are now so ingrained with political correctness and the anti-Islamophobia law, Justin Trudeau attacking anyone who raises the specter that Canadians should be afraid of radical Islam. I'm not sure what can be done now. I think now what needs to be done, though, I mean, we've got to be more vigilant. We are probably watching their bad guys if they aren't, and we're going to have to keep doing that.
Okay, Dale Hurd, thanks for your insights, and thank you for bringing us a story that we're unlikely to see anywhere else.
You're welcome.
Up next, you can get a garden salad on this Garden State College campus, but not a Chic-Fil-A sandwich. We'll tell you why.
Parents, the Superbook Bible app is a great way to get your child reading the Bible, because in today's busy world, we can use some help. The free Superbook Bible app has fun stuff your kids will love. They'll have a blast learning the Bible, playing great games, watching cool videos, discovering heroes in the Bible. They'll have fun while they learn God's Word. The Superbook Kids Bible app, available now.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
We had 4 jobs that didn't go right. But, you know, we didn't waver in our faith.
That's when God put on my heart that we needed to do the well.
Within a couple of days, we got an insurance refund check that we had no idea was coming.
And here we are, you know, this year, it's just boom.
You go out and help other people and you get rewarded for it.
Get Pat Robertson's latest teaching, Miraculous Blessings.
Chic-Fil-A may soon become America's 3rd largest fast food chain. But the popular restaurant is not welcome at one New Jersey campus. Students at Rider University say they want Chick-Fil-A on campus there. But the administration says no way. Well, joining us from Campus Reform's Leadership Institute is Emma Michelle. Emma, good to see you again. So tell us, what's going on at Rider University? I guess they're concerned more about than just chicken sandwiches.
Definitely. Rider University's decision to come out with this statement against Chick-fil-A and to ban the restaurant from their campus shows just how far left and just how loony the college campus has gotten. Students elected in a poll overwhelmingly to bring Chick-fil-A to their campus. The school essentially released a poll asking students, which restaurant would you like to see on campus next? And we all know that Chick-fil-A is a very popular restaurant across the country, but especially with young people. And their #1 choice was Chick-fil-A. Yet we see that the college comes out with this statement saying that the company's values had not progressed along enough with the values of Rider. And this is just one more example of the college campus taking an opportunity and making it very politicized and demonizing people who are on the right. Because we understand that Chick-fil-A does have corporate leadership that do have more traditional values, and Rider has taken that to mean that they are completely anti-LGBT and therefore not allowed to be on campus. And they're using this as an opportunity to further demonize the right.
Well, it doesn't seem like Chick-fil-A would be pushing their values on people when they come and order a chicken sandwich.
Definitely not. Yeah, and students really are taking this option and they're choosing this, I think, because they want to eat the food.
I met Chick-fil-A founder Truett Cathy years ago. He seemed like a friendly man who shared godly values. So what's wrong with that, Emma?
Chick-fil-A is a great company. They actually have done a lot for the communities. And even when the Pulse nightclub had that terrible shooting that happened, Chick-fil-A opened on a Sunday to offer food to those donating blood. So I think it really does come down to the fact that the college campus is using this as an excuse to vilify a company that has been connected to Christian values. And ultimately, this is just an opportunity for them to show how progressive they are. And often, as we've reported at the Leadership Institute's Campus Reform, colleges come down to a contest of who can be the most progressive and who can take things the farthest. And I think this is just another example of that.
I also understand some colleges are actually helping students cope with the trauma of election laws. Tell us about that.
Yes. Elmhurst College in Illinois actually has set up safe spaces for students in the wake of the midterm elections, and they were offering free treats and cider and hot chocolate and coffee. And I think it's pretty ridiculous to see this happening on a college campus, especially because it assumes that all students feel harmed by these election results. And Illinois, there was some tight races going on there. It's pretty obvious that not every student on the campus shares that point of view. And it's just another instance of colleges alienating conservative and libertarian students and glorifying more liberal views. And it's for the taxpayers to decide when these are publicly funded colleges. We saw so many colleges come out with safe spaces after the 2016 election of President Donald Trump. And it was widespread. These were public institutions offering treats and daycare pretty much for these students. And what it comes down to is the taxpayers have to decide. These professors are employees of the taxpayers, and it's up to them to decide whether or not these are people that they want teaching on campuses that they fund.
And these campuses seem like they're now more about feelings rather than education. Okay, Emma Michelle from Campus Reform, thank you for setting us straight.
Thank you.
And up next, 2 American missionaries finished the good race. One is now well known. I knew the other one. I'll share my thoughts.
When you give, smiles grow bigger. When you care, homes are happier. When you comfort, the hurt goes away. When we all come together to love, miracles happen.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes and Google Play now.
26-year-old John Chow knew what he was up against when he climbed into a fishing boat and attempted to meet the tribal people of North Sentinel Island. The Indian government prohibits outsiders from making contact with the isolated people group. But for years, Chow was determined to tell the tribespeople about Jesus. He knew he could end up in jail or dead. On Chow's third attempt to befriend them, the North Sentinel tribesmen stole away the young missionary's life by shooting him with arrows. He never got the chance to explain about Jesus. Now, some people say Chow was reckless. I think he felt he was being obedient to God. Word of Chow's death has traveled around the world, but I want to tell you about another less-known missionary who recently passed from this earth. Her name was Sandy Earle. I knew her personally. We became friends and colleagues nearly 20 years ago during my time with the Voice of the Martyrs. Later, we worked together to bring help to people in Egypt and parts of Africa. Sandy was selfless, obedient to God's calling to serve others. I met up with her recently in North Carolina, where she shared her enthusiasm and zeal for helping orphans in Kenya. Sandy helped rescue many from street life, giving them food, housing, and hope for the future. In Egypt, she was known as Mama Sandy. In Kenya, Mum. Sandy died unexpectedly after suffering from a brain hemorrhage. I don't know why God would take her that way or why now. It seems Sandy had so much more to do. Some of the Kenya orphans viewed her memorial live on Facebook. They wept over the loss of their American friend. I messaged the orphanage manager and I told him to tell the children this: we all will die, some unexpectedly in the blink of an eye. The big question is how you will live your life. Like Sandy, will you know Christ and serve others, or will you live for yourself and die without knowing Him? After the Kenya orphans heard that, instead of dwelling on their loss, they remembered what they had gained by knowing Mum Sandy and the godly example she had set for them. They stopped crying. They were calm. May we all feel that peace. Yes, John and Sandy passed too soon, but like them, when our end comes, may we all finish the race in victory, running for, not away from Christ. Goodbye, Sandy, until the day that we meet again. That's it from the Global Lane. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube, and Twitter. And until next time, be blessed.